All right. So we're going to get started. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Give me a thumbs up, Gail, if you can hear me. Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. We're pretty excited to be offering this virtual seminar or webinar, if you will. So bear with us because this is really our first one. And if you notice in your screen, you can use the chat to chat with us and to ask questions. And then what we're going to do is you're going to all stay on mute until if we have, you're basically all going to stay on mute. And what we'll try and do is field these questions for the speakers at the end of their presentations. So we're going to start off with hearing from Pete Salerno of Stratus Concept. Pete is on our board of directors, and he's also been with the Marketing Tech Committee for the last couple of years. Brian DeKind is with DeKind Computer Consultants. He's been a member for a while, and we kind of roped him into helping us with this topic. And then Mike Iser is with Associated Insurance and Risk Management Advisors. Probably keeping pretty busy with all of this coronavirus and everyone's money, right? So before we get started and before I pass things over to Pete, I wanted to share with you a couple of things just so that you're aware as members what you can be doing with your, just to kind of keep people posted with what your business is up to. And even before that, I just want to make sure that you're aware on our website, we have a COVID-19 resources page right at the top. And we've been keeping this up to date pretty regularly. So right now you have all the loan links that you need to apply for. The hospitality emergency grant is actually, the deadline is passed, so you cannot apply for that at this point. So probably update that note today, but there's also the, the immediate payment reductions, the lines of credit, and then just some other helpful things that you can be involved with. For example, the Lake County Health Department has bi-weekly phone briefings. If you're interested in doing those, there's a guide to kind of walking through the CARES Act. There was a call, or there have been calls for nonprofits and how they can, take care of themselves during this time, and so on and so forth. And then we have the blog posts. So this has been a page that just started 2 weeks ago, and it's building, and we're going to keep it going as much as we can, and kind of blitz you guys via emails and text when we have something new on there. The other thing I wanted to do is show you how to post a news release. So on the website, we have a page right now that's started with various news releases. So I'm going to take the example of Sandy Smith. She wanted to be on today's call, but she ended up forgot that she had to do this class, which is new for her, because what she did is, she reinvented, and she brought her classes online. So I'm going to use her as an example, but you can see here the people that have posted press releases to let you know, like, hey, we're still open. For instance, Cast and Auto is still open. They're essential. So it kind of gives you a good place and a good platform to speak about what you're doing, whether you're, closed, but you're still offering online services, or etc. So how you're going to do that is you're going to go into your member login and put your information in. And once you're in there, you're kind of looking like this, right? And again, I'm using Sandy as a example. And off to the side, you're going to hit on the news releases. And that's where you're going to say, hey, I want to add a new release. Now you're going to see the others that are in there, but you want to add a new release. And then basically you're going to fill it out. What's the title? How long to publish it? We can keep it on for as long. We can always change those dates for you if things still continue. The body text. And then you're going to click the press release category. You can add an image, be it your company logo. And then you're going to submit for approval. And once you submit for approval, our staff gets that, and we go ahead and put that on, so it will reflect on that news alert page. And then what we're doing occasionally is we're pushing this news alert page out through social so people can see your information. So it seems like it's kind of a lot of steps, but it's really the most organized way for us to do it. and to be able to handle the influx of member needs at this time. So with that, I just want to check on Pete. I'm going to unmute you. Do you have word from Brian? Oh, hold on.
Brian's on, so we're good.
All right, cool. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to, again, just let Pete take things over. Hold on, before I start, I would be remiss if I did not introduce you to Kent Smith. Kent's not showing his face right now, but he was, so I'm not sure where there he is. Yay! So Kent is also a director on our board of directors, and he is now leading this new, or should I say revised, marketing and tech committee. And the marketing tech committee is trying to bring resources like this to our members. So they've been working hard to line up some different events throughout the remainder of this year. So thank you, Kent, for your hard work. And Pete, too, you've been leading this for a while. So thank you guys for your hard work in doing this. And with that, I'm going to transfer it over. Pete, you can go ahead and screen share.
Okay.
And again, as you have questions, put them in the chat so you don't forget them, and then we'll address them at the end.
You got to unshare first.
Okay. There you go.
All right. All right, and I'm Pete Salerno, and let me just give me a second to start this. All right. There we go. So we just wanted to start, we were planning this as a face-to-face panel discussion, but being a technology committee, we probably should have been targeting this all along, but I think now everyone's getting used to it. So I think this would be a good, it's a good one to start with. We're thinking about, well, what's, most important about your business, and protecting it, especially now. There's a lot of scams out there that are happening, and I think Brian's going to talk about some of those in his section. But it's the idea of being prepared. If something happens to your business, it's not just what happens to you. It's it's what happens to your clients as well. So and being irresponsible could actually lead to legal issues and other things. So being prepared is something that's kind of important, and that's what we wanted to talk about. Now the problem is that vulnerabilities to your technology is everywhere. It's social media, it's the telephone itself, people walking in, reading your screen, it's people, with thumb drives, just kind of like walking in and stealing stuff, or actually inserting something. In a couple of seconds, someone can stick a thumb drive into a USB port, and it will automatically run a script if your computer's not set up to protect it. And it could actually create a keylogger or even just pull all the data and send it somewhere before you even knew what was happening. So there's all these things. The problem is it's very hard to kind of figure these out. So, the industry has kind of gone through and broken it down into buckets, right? There's ransomware, which is stealing, basically locking stuff up and forcing you to pay to get it back. There's malware, which is just wreak havoc on your internal systems. The phishing and social engineering on how they get credentials and how they get in. And then insider threats, which is not necessarily malicious insiders, but just untrained staff doing something wrong. So, you got all these issues. And where that falls into play, again, in your business is, what are your responsibilities? Well, you have customer information. It might be birthdays, it might be social security number, addresses, phone numbers, all that personal identifiable information, PII, that people talk about. So that's the first thing you've got to protect. Obviously, to do that, you got to protect usernames and passwords of your stuff. So that, again, that's kind of, where you're focused. And then the last thing you have to do is you have to protect your transactions and your confidential files. So if you're a real estate agent and you're dealing with stuff with, you know, home sales, and, you know, someone spoofs your email address and sends your client, you know, send money to this other bank instead because something's changed, and they don't call you to verify that it's correct, they've lost their money, and there's no way of getting it back. That's called business email compromise in some places, but that's something that you really have to watch for. And again, Brian will probably dig into some of these a bit more too. So what I wanted to do is talk about how do you protect yourself. We talk about defense in layers. So in the old days, you know, they would build, you know, a castle up on a hill, and that kind of protected it. Then people started building around it, and then they had to put a wall around that to protect that, and then a moat, and then people keep expanding out. So in order to, that whole idea of layers of defense takes place also within business technology. And we're going to talk about it in kind of 5 layers here. Hardware security, and I'll cover that next. Email safety, that Brian will talk about. Data backup, Brian will talk about. Staff training, again, Brian. And then the last thing, and for all those other things, your fail-safe is the cyber insurance, and Mike will talk about that. So the first thing you do is, you know, you kind of put a wall up around stuff. That's called a firewall. And the purpose of that is basically to prevent stuff from getting into your network. In many cases, if you have a home network, that firewall is built into your gateway from Comcast or AT&T, but that's not really business class. I mean, there's a lot of stuff could still get through that, and that's why there's a whole class of business firewalls from many different companies, and you should talk to Brian or myself about, you know, if you have a business network where you have files and things that are stored within your local network, then you want to do that. Even if it's at home, you may still need a firewall. So that's the first layer. The next thing that you really need to do and it's probably, even if you don't have a firewall, this is very important, is updating your software. So if you remember back the Equifax hack that, you know, hit what, 250 million Americans with, you know, compromised social security numbers, all of that occurred through a vulnerability that was known and patched 6 months earlier. Now, for various reasons, you can't roll out patches right away, especially in a big company like Equifax, but the fact that they didn't take it seriously, you know, what was a big problem, and obviously to half the country at least. So software updating is something that's important. I know it's really annoying, especially in Windows, when it sits there and says updating, and you just, you know, have to go get a cup of coffee and come back 10 minutes later before it's done. But it's something that's really important and should be done. And you should look at your other software that you use besides the operating system. And that's true for your websites as well. So you want to look at your website. If your software is not updated on your website, it could get compromised, and it could start spreading malware, or it could actually, you know, also send your visitors to embarrassing places. So it's something that goes across all of your technology. Then you want to add endpoint security. And if you notice, I have stuff that's out here in the periphery, that outside the firewall, because not everyone works within the business. There's people, especially now, almost everyone's working from home. So you got to think about your home systems connecting to your network as well. And endpoint security these days is more than just antivirus. You know, it works with the firewall that your operating system has, but it does do antivirus, but it's more anti-malware. It may use heuristics and basically look at the products that are running, and if they execute in a pattern that looks malicious, it may start to block it. It may have certain rules and stuff that you can do, because there's too many viruses that are being generated on a daily basis for you to just do matching of viruses. You have to look at what the actual actions are. So that's a good business class endpoint security is something that's important. A lot of them are centrally managed as well, so that people like Brian and I can look at a dashboard and see who's updated, who's not updated. We could also look at, in some cases, you can look at the software that's installed on the computer and whether or not that's up to date as well. So the red and the yellow can actually be merged in with it. It becomes endpoint management. There's a lot there that's really important that you should be looking at. And then the last thing, when you're at home and you're on Wi-Fi, or you're no one's working out of Starbucks these days, but when you do start working back out of Starbucks or whatever, now that you're been freed from the office and can work, a VPN is very important. And then what that is you can see, it's like a bridge that gets you into the network. And it takes you into the network in a secure way. And then that internal network, it might be, like in my case, the VPN endpoint is inside my house, so that I know that anything, if I'm out on the road, anything I do is the same thing as if I'm coming out of my house. It encrypts to that point. The same thing would be if you've got a business location and you're VPNing into the business location. It actually has a number of advantages. First, your appearance is encrypted all the way into there, but then VPNs will also give you access to file servers and printers and stuff that might be internal to the business, should you want to access those as well. So there's a lot of advantages to VPNs in general, but for protection of yourself, you want to encrypt that blue path between you and wherever the VPN endpoint is, so that people can't get your passwords or listen to what's going on. It all prevents a lot of issues as far as spoofing of proxying, basically acting as a man-in-the-middle attack. So it's really a good thing to do. And then there's more things you can do, and those more things is what we're going to talk about next. Again, I'm going to hand it off to Brian, but before I hand it off to Brian, I just wanted to play one little video for you guys, and hopefully you guys can all see this.
As the global pandemic continues, coronavirus COVID-19 scams are also ramping up. We recently discussed a scam where cybercriminals were sending phishing emails that looked like they were coming from the World Health Organization with important information on the virus. While these scams are still rampant, new scams are emerging that we all must be aware of. Here are some of these new scams built around the novel coronavirus that you should be aware of. Beware of interactive maps you find online or on social media. Cybercriminals are circulating a global map of total coronavirus-related cases and deaths. The map is interactive and accurate with valid current information, but the real threat lays in the background. In order to open the map, it must be downloaded by the user. But downloading the map will install a keylogger that can steal passwords and information. The map will still function normally, and the user may not be aware they are infected, increasing the likelihood that the map gets shared with friends and family. These malicious maps are not being used by just one cybercriminal either. The toolkit to run this scam is available for sale on the dark web for just a few $100s. There are real and safe interactive maps out there with helpful information, so just make sure you are finding these tools from an accurate and trustworthy source. don't fall for investment opportunities or get-rich-quick scams related to the coronavirus. Many scammers are peddling fake companies on the verge of a breakthrough cure or vaccine and need funding to reach their goal. They promise a quick and lucrative profit for those who invest, but your financing will only line the pocket of a scammer. Continue to watch out for phishing emails or fake websites playing off these coronavirus fears. Common scams include teases of a vaccine, at-home remedies, or local health agencies with important information about the virus in your community. For the details, the recipient is directed to download an attached file or click on a link. Don't take the bait. Before you click or open anything, know who is sending you the information and what you are being directed to open. Phone scams are also on the rise with this outbreak. Over-the-phone scammers can pretend to be anyone. Their options are endless, but as with any suspicious phone call, never give out any sensitive personal information or financial information. The healthcare industry is especially vulnerable during this time, as cybercriminals have recognized the intense amount of pressure these businesses are under. Cybercriminals are sending a phishing email with a Word document attached, encouraging healthcare employees to download the attachment, which contains infection prevention measures. Scammers are also posing as trusted businesses, claiming to have personal protective equipment like gloves, face masks, and gowns readily available, all of which are in short supply. Some scams have even been reported where individuals are being contacted by a scammer posing as a medical professional, claiming to need personal or payment information to treat their infected family member. As we take precautions to safeguard our personal health, let's also apply similar precautions against scammers. Beware of these current and emerging scams, and inform your friends and family to help protect them as well.
Okay, I'm going to pass it off to Brian, so I'm going to stop sharing here, and Brian, you should be able to pick it up.
Brian, you're on mute. Nope. Is your computer itself maybe on? Pete?
Can you call me? I'll put you on speaker.
Why can't he?
I see the mute symbol now show up.
How about now? Working okay
Yeah,
now?
there you
There.
go. All right.
Okay.
Oh, the
All
fun
right.
of technology, guys.
There we go. Even the computer guy gets a little bit of attitude to the computer every now and then. So thank you, Pete. Thank you, Claire, for organizing. Let me see if maybe sharing my screen was a little smoother here. So that everybody should see a quick PowerPoint that we'll step through here. So Pete's video there was actually a perfect intro into the steps we want to talk about here. So we're going to cover 3 components here. Email safety and what to look for specifically with email threats and some ways to mitigate that, data backups and what to look for in your backup system, and staff training, which we think is an important part, if not the most important part here. A lot of this, as you saw in Pete's video, plays on the human element here as well too. So training is certainly a very integral component here. So what is phishing and what are the warning signs? So the things we would like you to think about when you're looking at your email is, do you know the sender and are you expecting a message from them? So back 10 years ago, it used to be, don't open anything that you don't know the sender. That rule's kind of matured into, are you expecting a message for them, or is the message relevant to your current context and communications with that person? Are they suddenly asking you for money or asking you to donate to a cause that would be outside of your normal relationship with them? Who's the message intended for? Is it addressed to you or is it addressed to a group? And do you know the other people that are on there? Is it something that could have potentially started from a group email chat and matured further? What's the subject about, and is it something that requires your attention? Does the content of the email pertain to you? If you're not sure, it's better to be safe than sorry. So for example, a generic email saying, see the attached, if it has what appears to be a PDF file attached, you would generally use caution opening that up. Again, when we say better safe than sorry, better safe to have that sender resubmit a message to you or say, hey, did you get that email? I'm waiting on a response to it, than just to automatically assume. And for example, if I was to automatically assume that all emails that came from Pete, 100% safe, open up all the context without giving it a second thought. And in the same vein, not only attachments, but hyperlinks as well. So if there's a link within an email, previewing the desktop, we'll do in some of the slides ahead here, by hovering over link is an easy way to prevent infection. And then lastly is the email from an external source. So you might see very commonly now when you get an email back, the best example I can give you most commonly is a bank. You might see in their email reply back that the email you sent them now has a thread on it saying this is from an external sender. If you have that enabled within your system and you have what appears to be an internal email that says external source, that address is being spoofed. It's coming from someplace outside of your email server. So this, for example, is an example of mass phishing. And we've got some arrows here highlighting some of the things to watch out for. So for example, here, this email says it's from Wells Fargo. But if you look at the domain, and this is just a screenshot out of Outlook here, it actually came from a LinkedIn email address. Again, the subject refers to Wells Fargo, the from address doesn't match up there. And then the names, the punctuation in some of these emails is usually pretty poor, or you'll see them address you a little bit more formally than perhaps that person would normally reach out to you. And then here you'll see again, pretty blatantly in this example, a link put within the email here, telling you to click on it. No place inside of this email, if you look for the .com, that's generally a good place to start. And following that to the left, there's nothing here indicating that this is Wells Fargo. As a best practice, if you're getting an email from a source such as a bank saying click here to be brought to the login page, it's generally speaking safer for you to open your web browser and go to that bank site directly and log in the way you're accustomed to logging in versus using a link that was provided to you in an email. This is a different type of phishing. It's called spear phishing. So this is pretty direct here as well. You'll notice here that it does look like it came from that company. They don't have any filtering in here to show internal or external source. And they're asking urgently to get a copy of all employees' W-2s and tax statements. Again, this is a very directed attack. That's where spear comes from in the name. And this usually comes from business records or website information. If you run a company, for example, has a CFO listed on your website, they can very easily spoof that email address and say, here's the owner, here's the CFO, and the CFO or the owner to ask for copies of W-2s from the CFO might not be uncommon, which is where you'd see an email like this. It falls back to the trust but verify. So here, if I was a CFO and I received this email from the owner of the business, I would follow that up with a phone call before sending that information back to them. And we tell the users to always verify on another media separate from the email. So if I reply back to this email, I could very easily be replying and conversing and confirming that email with the person who's doing the spoofing. So in this case, I would pick up the phone, call and say, did you send this? Just confirming that you're asking for this information before you were to send something like that back. So clone phishing here, we've got a couple things up here. This looks like it came from eBay up here at the top. The email addresses can be made to look like they come from other sources. I could very easily send an email to Pete making it look like it came from President Trump. When he hits the reply button, that email address would change. So not only be cognizant of the from address, even if it appears okay, but when you reply back to the email, make sure that that address doesn't change. So if we see here, they're contacting us with some information. We're not sure whether it's valid or not about an email item, but when I preview the link and hover over what I would normally click on to bring me to a web page, I'll see again here that I don't see any reference to eBay, or in the beginning portion of the address here, nothing that says ebay.com. If I thought that this email was legitimate, the best practice would be to open a web browser, type in ebay.com, sign in, and look for this message in my email, in my eBay inbox, as opposed to acting on this email. A lot of these will look like Dropbox links or file shares. If you click respond now, it would pop up to a page that looks very much like the eBay sign-in page, asking for your username and password. And it wouldn't put you into eBay. It would just send your credentials off to the person that's running this phishing scam. Link manipulation again here. So you can see this is a preview of our spam filter system, which we'll touch on in a couple slides here, but it looks like it's coming from Microsoft, that your email account would be suspended unless you click on the link to reply back to it with your email account information. These are very, very common. You'll see that a lot of common antivirus, anti-spam software picks that up as a virus and malware. So be very cognizant, be on the lookout for emails like that. Again, talk to your IT person. We tell our clients, you're not going to get an email like this from us asking for any email credentials, anything like that across an unsecure email. So it's another example, clone phishing and link manipulation. Again, when you look at the email address up here at the top, it says it's from your IT admin team. But when you look at the reply to address here, it's from someplace totally different. And then when we hover over the link, where again, it's telling us that we need to click on this link and enter our credentials. When we hover over that, we see a bunch of garbage. And when we look at the very beginning portion of that garbage, we see nothing that's relevant to our email system, our company name before a .com or .org here. So again, something like this, question over the phone or over a text message, some other form of communication other than a reply back to that email chain. Same thing here is another example with Verizon. Verizon Wireless is the name coming from the from, but we see that under the reply back, that's not VerizonWireless.com. And then when you hover over the link that says to sign into Verizon Wireless, this very clearly is not the Verizon or myVerizonWireless.com that you would be hoping you'd be brought to. So email spoofing is the creation of messages with a forged sender. A good analogy that we often use is the from address that's on an envelope you'd get in the regular old post office mail. You could very easily write whatever email address or whatever return address you wanted on that envelope, and there's no validation to that. And at its rudimentary level, basic email follows that same principle. So you can see here, I can very easily change the name to say it's from Bill Gates and have it come from a totally different email address. So we use a product from a company, AppRiver. The product is called SecureTide. It's a hosted service, which means that there's no server hardware, anything like that, that you would install on your network. The filters for that system are updated several times a day, if not a couple hundred times a day. And they're monitored by a 24/7 team that looks at what is passing through in detail and if there are ways for them to better enhance that filter. So it gets very close to the zero-day exploits that as you see things when the COVID-19 pandemic started, you see a lot of attempts coming through their email system. They tighten down and batten down those hatches as they go. The emails that get held for you that get tagged as spam come to you in the report in a daily held mail report. You get an email every morning at 5 o'clock in the morning showing what was held for you in the last 24-hour period that you can screen in a secure portal that has no way of infecting your machine. Gives you a very vanilla look at that email to say, yes, I recognize this, it's relevant, or no, this is something that in fact it was a positive that the filter caught this. So it sits, the AppRiver SecureTide portal sits between your email server and your machines ending up checking. So anyone that sends you an email does get validated through that AppRiver portal as well. This is just an example of one of the reports that AppRiver will generate, and you can see here that this is an example for one of our active clients. You can see the amount of email volume as total over the course of a couple weeks here, and you can see a significant portion of that is email that's blocked. So there's a lot of different types of things that are blocked. You'll see that over here on the left, whether that's simple spam, malware, or phishing attempts. There's a lot. A lot of people have a lot of content in their held mail reports. So some protection methods here, just to recap and touch on some of the things that Pete touched on here too. You never want to send passwords, account numbers, or private information via email. Navigate directly to the website, not clicking on the links in an email or on social media. Be cautious when opening attachments, and if you don't know the sender, play it safe. You can always reach back out to that person. You can pull that email from your deleted items. You can contact them over the phone or text message, instant messaging to confirm, hey, in fact, you did send this, and you need me to take action on it. When you're on the web, look for the HTTPS. When you're in a website entering private information, Google and Chrome's done a really good job here lately as of requiring sites to be HTTPS. So just be cognizant when you're entering information, especially tax season, and a lot of the info that's being submitted online right now. Again, up-to-date antivirus that's in fact up-to-date and working, and dedicated malware protection. So we will load on our clients' machines a mix of both antivirus software and anti-malware software. So it's a layered approach. As Pete touched on earlier with his visual, you've got not only the spam filter from a company like AppRiver blocking and warding off those threats, but then the 99.9% rule, the little portion that makes it through, your antivirus and your malware, your firewall, a VPN, those are all extra layers of protection building up. And then lastly would be your data backup. So unfortunately, there are times that we do need to revert back to backup to pull data. And there's a lot of different products out there relevant to backups, whether they back up to the cloud and so forth. So from a very high level here, make sure or talk to your IT staff that you're saving your files in the appropriate place to be captured by the backup. And what does that mean? For example, a lot of folks are working from home right now. Very commonly, you would have a shared network drive that you share files with corporate office staff on the computer. If you save a file to your desktop or to your local machine, as we'd refer it to, is that being captured by your backup? And are the backups being validated more than just confirming that the job ran as complete? We've been contacted by companies in the past that they're reaching out to us because they thought they had a valid backup in place. It shows that the job ran successful, but when you look at it in a little more detail, the job completes in 2 seconds. Safe to say that's probably not grabbing a full backup of your data, and that something's wrong there. So again, trust but verify. Have you tested a file restore? Can you go back 2 weeks, a week, yesterday, and pull back a file that you were working on from the backup? And lastly, of the high-level points, replication to a secure offsite location. Is your software capable of backing up to another location? Does it do that by default? For example, most of our backups will back up to something on-premise for fast restores, but will also replicate to an offsite location. So a lot of the ransomware will now look for your backup and will look at sabotaging your backup as well. So what safeguard is in place and what firewall is in place between your local copy of your backup and the replication that's done off-site. And then lastly, if you do back up to an off-site location someplace in the cloud, what's the speed of that restore? If you're talking a large, substantial amount of data, how quickly can that be pulled back for you if you need to go to that cold offline copy of that storage. And lastly here, staff training. So educating users on your best practices. We do training very often for our clients on email. The spoofing slides that you saw earlier were right out of that training. Web browsing as well, what to look for when you're online, what to do when you do end up in the weeds. Warning signs, what you want to look for, like we touched on with the email. And then importantly too, report issues directly to IT. We don't want you to say, we know the IT guy comes every Thursday afternoon. This is Wednesday night when I clicked on that bad link. I'll see him tomorrow and I'll bring it up to him then. We'd rather know about that problem early, often, to take action and verify that in fact nothing happened or something happened to start taking action. And then the last thing that we'll do some education on is multi-factor authentication. So a lot of you, if you log into an online banking portal, will receive a text message or some other way, an email with a couple-digit code. There's a lot of different forms that multi-factor authentication comes in. But certainly if that capability exists on any of the platforms that you're using, by all means enable it. It's one more layer of defense there as well. And then we'll trust but verify again, follow through on the testing. So when you've done education to your staff, there is a free resource. The link is up there on the screen and I can post it in the chat window here as well. Will they open a sample link the day after training? Will they open it up the next day and the next week? Know Before is a great training site. That link there offers free IT tools where you can very easily set up a sample spoofing email to go to your staff, and it will identify that when you pull that resource, you can say 50% of you clicked on a link yesterday that you should not have clicked on, and then that's a good lead and intro into your staff training. Then try it again a week later. If that 50% dropped to 10%, then the training was effective and good. And just here lastly, a recap questions to ask yourself. Do I know the person? Am I expecting an email from them? Do I have the proper virus, malware, and spam protection in place? Am I performing regular backups? And when was the last time you verified and validated that backup? And is the email coming from an external source? With that, I'll turn over here to Mike.
Good morning, everybody. So you've heard from the guys that you want working on your systems. And when we look at an insurance program, it's based upon basically a three-layer stool. One is going to be the specialists, the people like Peter and Brian that will come out and work with your company. And then you'll come to me as the insurance broker and say, no, we don't need any coverage. We've got it all handled. Well, the problem is that 43% of cyber attacks are aimed at the small business, but only 14% are prepared to defend themselves either with proper security or even insurance. And this, when you have a cyber loss, it's most of the 60% of the businesses of any size may never recover and may go out of business within 6 months because many parts of the loss you're not thinking about. When you buy a small business owner's policy, as most people will do, there will be a small amount of insurance for cyber, anywhere between $10,000 and $50,000, depends on who the company is. But that's nowhere sufficient to cover you in the event that you have a loss. Because not only are you going to, you potentially can be sued by your own customers because their information has gotten out there. You could be sued by local government. You have a responsibility to protect everybody's records. And if you don't do that, your cyber policy will come there and protect you and defend you in that case. The normal business owner's policy that only gives you $50,000 of coverage isn't going to do that, because when you have a small business loss, it could cost you up to $865,000 if you have 10,000 records that are stolen, which may not be, that's a good average figure to use. So when we look at the insurance, where we have to look at where you're going to be potentially sued and where you need help. So you may need to bring in, you're going to need to bring in people that are specialists, such as third-party people that are going to help you with the crisis management situation. You're going to have to bring back in guys like Peter and Brian who are going to get your systems back up and running, and that's going to cost them a lot of money. It's going to cost you a lot of money in order to do that. You may have to bring in the forensic people in order to try to figure out exactly what happened and how they got in there. All of this is covered by insurance. But what happens if someone is successful in a phishing expedition, just as we just were talking about, and you transfer funds to somebody else's account and those dollars are gone? These policies will pick that up. Most of the policies will do anything from $100,000 to $250,000 automatically coming out of the box. In some cases, depending on the size of your business, you can buy higher limits of coverage. The unfortunate part is that, like I said, most people don't believe that they're ever going to be hacked, and as a result, they end up with no coverage or insufficient coverage to pick everything else up. So when we talk to clients, we want them to understand that you have a broker who is there to look out for you. You have an insurance company, and all of the companies have different forms of cyber. That does your broker know which ones are the best that are out there? And then the last thing, the very last thing, not the first, is how much is this going to cost? You cannot buy insurance strictly based upon the cost. You have to base it based on the coverage that is provided and whether you have, whether you like the guy that's sitting across from you, either in person or in video, and that you can trust that individual. That's about as simple as it can be. That's all I've got. Pete?
Okay, I'm unmuting. Okay. All right, yes. So there's a couple of questions out there. And I think there was one, someone asked about total defense from GoDaddy. I have an opinion on it, and I'm sure Brian does too. So let me give my opinion first, and then we'll let Brian go in. And again, these are opinions. Everyone's got different takes on on each of these. I'm kind of soft when I talk to my clients. I let them kind of use what they want, but something like GoDaddy, I wouldn't recommend for a business. It would be fine if it's maybe a small business with one person or two people. The problem comes in with management of the product. And that's true even with Office 365. I wouldn't recommend getting it through GoDaddy. I would recommend going directly to Microsoft or coming to someone like Brian or myself and let us subscribe and bill you for it. That doesn't cost anymore, but you get the benefits of local support, and you get the benefits of using the actual Microsoft tools for managing it, as opposed to something that was patched on top of it, like GoDaddy tends to do. So I like centralized management for the malware and stuff. The products I use, very similar to Brian's, are cloud-based products. They provide me a dashboard. I can look at all kinds of statistics across customers, across one customer, across multiple customers. So you get some of the benefit of aggregated knowledge. So that's kind of my take on it. So I would say before you go into that, they make it very easy for you to click and accept it. I would say come to a security or an IT person, or someone like I said, like Brian or myself. There's a few others out there in the local area, but I would definitely talk to one of us before you jumped into something like that. Brian, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, perfect, Pete. So you hit it right on the head first with the disclaimer. Every IT person is going to have their toolbox of what's worked well for them, similar to Ford versus Chevy. Everybody here is going to have a different opinion one way or the other, and that's exactly how we like to put it to folks. You hit it on the head, Pete. GoDaddy for email security, total defense. we're not fans of that either. We do have a little bit of a different approach in that we do have an offering that we do like to see, just to kind of set a standard for antivirus and anti-malware. Semantic antivirus product on the corporate end is one of the good antivirus products out there, and that's not to say that there aren't others. Those are just the ones that, for some of the reasons Pete touched on, we like to see that deployed at client sites. Malwarebytes is good on the malware front of things, and there are other up-and-coming contenders that are changing the front there as well. And then for email security, our firm at least is exclusive to AppRiver for email filtering and email security. And that goes for email encryption as well.
Yeah, I didn't talk about the specific products, but yeah, I have a set. I use Mail Protector, I use F-Secure. So those are the kind of the things. And it's good to standardize on something. So, different people will standardize on different ones. And that, again, that helps because the knowledge of how to best deploy that kind of product and get it and support it is very important, which you won't get. I mean, if anyone's called into support, and I hate to pick on GoDaddy. Well, actually, I do like to pick on GoDaddy. If you try to call into their support, and, you spend, 20 minutes waiting on the phone for someone to answer, and then, they read from a script of what you're supposed to do, and then you go through that whole script, and then they find out, oh, that's not even related to your problem. It's much better to have someone in your hometown and that can actually answer the questions and be responsible to you.
So Pete, we have one for the Starbucks. When it comes to using VPN, when I'm at Starbucks, there are free VPNs and premium ones that cost money. Do I really need a premium VPN service? So
yeah, let me answer that one first. You need to know who's providing the VPN. Just because it says it's a VPN and it's free out there and you found it on the web, is it a VPN that's taking you through, through Russia and or whatever, you need to know where it is. There's a couple out there. Proton Mail offers a good one. Google has one that takes a little bit of time that I've actually set up. You can set it up as a cloud server or as I did as an appliance in my house because I wanted to have full control over it. It's free, but it takes time to set up. But I would go with something that's reputable. A lot of the, Symantec, I believe, has a VPN. If you have a firewall, a lot of the firewall companies, all of the firewall companies, SonicWall, Barracuda, Fortinet, all of those companies, they all offer VPN access through the firewall. So look to see what you have as far as technology to start with. And then if you don't have anything already, I would say if you do choose a free one, vet it out first, check, make sure it's, not just a fly-by-night operation that's doing it. Brian, did you want to add to that?
I agree 100% with everything you said on the VPN front. Absolutely.
You guys play so nice.
There are things the IT guys agree upon.
Yeah. So here, Brian, how about what's the difference between a VPN and a hotspot?
Sure. So a VPN is going to connect you between two endpoints and kind of give you the analogy I like to use is a pill capsule. So when you send information, if I VPN, for example, from my home into my office, every bit of information that's crossing the internet in the wide open, so to speak, is encapsulated inside a pill capsule that encrypts that information. So somebody looking at or inspecting that traffic as it's traveling across the internet can't see what's inside that capsule. And the VPN is secure in the sense that when it reaches its destination, it has the keys to open up that container, look at the information so that someone can't be sitting next to you in Starbucks and say, here's the password that they're using, here's their credit card number. And at a very vanilla level, that's what VPN is. A mobile hotspot is just another way for you to jump on the internet. VPN, for example, is going to protect you when you're on common public Wi-Fi. Starbucks is a prime example there. A mobile hotspot is going to be more secure for you. That's your own device. Other people are not jumping onto that Wi-Fi too unless you give them the code. So if you're in Starbucks and you have the option of a mobile jetpack or mobile hotspot of your own and Starbucks, and you're able to work with the speeds and things that your hotspot provides you, we'd recommend that you use the hotspot versus the free public Wi-Fi at a place like a Starbucks.
Okay. Brian, can you just answer about the questions about the password? So what is a strong password? And then do you recommend a password keeper? If so, which one?
Sure.
Or
So
which ones?
a strong password, at least 8 characters, and you want to have a good mix of letters, both capital and lowercase, symbols and numbers in there as well. A lot of times when we ask people for a strong password, they'll have to put their thinking hat on and not pop to mind. Think of something very easy at its rudimentary level. You can say the password would be, Kent is great, or Kent is number 1, right? So you've added a symbol, a capital letter, a number, and made that password into more of a phrase. So take your normal password. If you're not sure that it's strong, capitalize some of it and make a statement out of it with some symbols inside of there, or swap out some letters for symbols, and that will give you very easily a quick path to getting on the, to a strong password.
And even though you don't have, even though you have, let's say you have that mixture, that good mixture of numbers, symbols, letters, should you or should you not use that same one for different places?
Or resources, yeah. So you should not share passwords across platforms, and the simple reason for that is if one is compromised or that password to one is compromised, it's just that key that you're tossing away and need to reset that password there. If you use the same key or password across all of your platforms, now you don't know what that person who's compromised your password has access to. Do they have access to the bank, to my email, to my GoDaddy account, versus this is the password that was compromised, that's the only one that needs to change. And then another best password practice would be rotating your password. And I think that's a good lead in into the password keepers. So there are some, I can give you names here that we use. I'm sure Pete has some here as well, that are going to pop up and tell you the strength of the password. Hey, that's not very strong. Why don't you add X, Y, and Z to the password to make it a little bit stronger? Or it will go as far as generating a totally random password for you that you're not expected to memorize, and that it will paste into the different programs that you need to have access into. It will come up and tell you, hey, best practice, you're at that 30-day mark. This password maybe not be expiring, and the bank might not force you to change it, but the security platform, the password keeper, would suggest, hey, it's been 30 days, time for you to rotate that password. The two that we like to use, LastPass is very predominant in that space. Has a mobile app, works very well. For larger corporate teams, we like Secret Server. It's from a company, Thycotic, and again, I'll put this all in the chat here in a few minutes. Secret Server is, both of them are by subscription, and have mobile apps, let you decrypt, share passwords one-on-one, and they're pretty inexpensive for what they are. Pete, I'm sure there's a whole slew of others out there.
Yeah, so I would add to that list Dashlane and 1Password. Again, they're very popular. The LastPass, I believe, is owned by GoToMeeting, so that has some good credentials behind it as well. The other thing, I actually don't do the easy to remember kind of things. I just let the random numbers always. I make them longer. So I usually like 10 to 12 characters, completely random generated, and I let the password manager do it because everyone's different and I don't try to remember any of them. The only one I need to remember is the one that gets me into my password manager, and that one is a secure one that's easy that I can remember. And I also have a copy of that password in my Firebox so that in case something happens, someone can get in and they can, they can actually unlock that. Otherwise, all my passwords are locked and no one will ever know what they are. So that's another piece.
So in lieu of everyone's time, it's a little after 11 here, and I want to wrap it up with one question. Because I think we have a lot of solopreneurs. Obviously, the chamber is made up of a lot of solopreneurs. What would you recommend? What's like kind of a minimum set of tools a solopreneur should use, and what might they expect to pay? I don't know if you want to pay range that, or just so that everyone leaves here kind of understanding, maybe, this isn't out of my league per se.
Okay.
Obviously, with everyone being on budget, tight budgets.
Sure. So a password manager is going to cost you maybe, $3-4 a month at the high end, I think. Brian, you can talk about those as well. I think you're going to pay about, at the high end, maybe $5 a month for the Endpoint Security, $5-6 a month maybe. Backup, that's going to vary depending on what your requirements are. Backup could be anywhere from, $15 to $25 a month up to $200, $300 a month, or there's no top end on that really, depending on how much data. But for a small business, you're probably going to, if you're just doing file backups, you can get by with something, in the $25 a month range probably. Brian, did you want to kind of?
No, all of those figures are certainly accurate. I would just encourage folks that when you do find a product that's out there, talk to someone like Pete or myself to validate what those are. Whether you're using our services or not, we want to make sure that for the common good, we're making sure that everybody's protected here. And the last thing you want to do is pay money to a company that you think is giving you a certain level of protection that someone like Pete and myself would just look at and shake our head at and say, throw it in the garbage. It's not worth that. So always run things like that past your trusted IT source.
Yeah, and someone like Brian and myself might bundle everything together into like a monthly thing along with some support time as well, so that it gives you a bit more comfort. Again, the whole idea is that if you're getting everything from one source, you have support across the board. For that, it makes it a little bit more secure for you because you're not trying to figure out where to go for something, because a lot of things interact. Sometimes backup won't work because the antivirus is blocking it. So things you have to work through.
All right. Well, I want to thank you guys so much for being here. It's great when we work together and to deliver this, really informative information and such a critical time. Pete, I think that video was really amazing, and I think it was pretty eye-opening to a lot of people, especially and so timely, because we're gonna see these emails and these things coming through to us. Probably, I've even heard that some people are showing up in hazmat suits at someone's house, and probably more like seniors, but like they think they're coming in to clean their house and they're there to do something else. So I want to thank you guys for speaking to us today, and I want to thank everyone on the call for being with us for our first webinar. We are top speed into tomorrow, where we are having a virtual happy hour. We've limited this to 25 people. Just again, like kind of today, where we just want to get a feel for it so that we can, blow it up next time. And I think this is the way of at least a month or two. And so what that happy hour is going to be is you're just going to jump on. I'm going to call on all the members one at a time. And as a member, you're just going to give your business, what you guys do, and maybe how someone can support you during this time. So whether you've moved your brick and mortar services over to virtual, whether you've closed, but you're still helping in some capacity, or just whatever it is that you need. So please join us. I think there's only one spot left, so maybe someone on this call will take it. And then we will have another one later in the month to open it up to more people. So with that, we will end the meeting. Have a great day, and hopefully we'll see some of you tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.